Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Need to Nerd. I am your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by one of my best friends, Wes Singleton.
Aw. It's okay, I understand. I wasn't in Vegas with you, so I obviously get that I'm not high on the list as of last weekend, but
What do you mean?
I'm hoping to rise in the power rankings soon.
I just said one of my best friends.
Yeah, but always shoot for that top spot when you can.
Oh, sure. I don't know. I think I'm getting to the age where I have too many best friends to have a power rankings anymore. Something I used to do, but I think that if there's anything that I learned while making the bracket for this episode itself, it's that it's all arbitrary, and I'm going to change my mind in a week anyway.
That's super real. Although, unfortunately, Spencer, this week, this is not arbitrary, and it will not only last a week. These are all time.
These are all time?
You cannot change your opinions after we set this in stone. We will decide. Yeah,
so the listeners are in for kind of a more relaxed episode. We're doing the villain bracket, as we announced a couple weeks ago. The thing that Wes was talking about back when we were doing our episode on season 3 of Legend of Korra. Or maybe it was season 4 that you brought up pitched the idea.
I think that we asked the question for Avatar in season 4.
Yeah, and honestly,
there's a solid. Yeah.
Honestly, I almost had an Avatar villain on my list. It was. I changed my list a little bit, but I almost had an Avatar villain on mine.
There's a really solid top 8 Avatar villains.
Let's before we get into our bracket and explain who our villains are and break down the seating for these. I just want to quickly mention that the best way to support the show is by heading over to either YouTube or wherever you're listening to a podcast, smashing the like button, or leaving a review on iTunes, wherever you're doing anything like that. If you're watching on YouTube, if you comment, it's super helpful. Just getting us into the algorithms more is the best way to help grow the show. And if you want to support the show directly, you can do that by heading over to patreon.com/easygamemedia. Everything is appreciated. It really means the world. It was funny, I got some feedback from one of our listeners while I was in Vegas this weekend, kind of just about, they said they've really been enjoying the podcast. They thought about leaving a review, and they talked about kind of that barrier to entry, like they don't know where to leave the review or which ones, you have leave the review on. They also talked to me about kind of the Patreon and money and stuff like that. And it was really good feedback, and I hope that listeners of this show know that it's always appreciated. I'm always super down to hear any feedback that you have on any of it, and ways that we can improve the show and the experience for you, as well as just making sure that we're coming across the way that we want to. I think that for me, I am a weirdo. I give a lot of my money away to content creators that I enjoy. I think it was my 19th month in a row being subscribed to Mason Clark on Twitch, for example, and I don't know that Mason has even streamed very much in the last 12 months. So, I support the people that make my life better. And if that's us right now for you, doing either of those things is a great way to support us. So we really appreciate it.
And I guess if you work at Twitch and you're listening to this, don't rat out Mason Clark.
Let's move on to kind of how this is going to go. So we each... Ooh. I was looking in my throat.
So I can take over. We each set our list of 8 villains that we thought were just amazing and worthy of talking about and worthy of consideration for the best villain of all time. And we didn't necessarily narrow ourselves to any particular medium. There are characters from books on here, there are characters from movies on here, there are characters from video games, and there are characters from anime on here. And American television shows. We've chosen it all. And we're going to run through, kind of explain our lists, and explain just briefly where they are all from. There are a couple on my list that Spencer might not be super familiar with, and there are some on Spencer's list that I'm definitely not familiar with.
Yeah, so let's kind of, let's actually just make it faster and easier. Let's just each do our 8, and then the other person can do their 8. So I'll go first. The first one on my list is Darth Vader. I think that it's maybe one of the most iconic villains in all of history. Like, it's funny. Vader, I think, has this thing about him, this mystique about him, that is really terrifying. Like, the first time that you watch Star Wars as a kid, Vader is scary. And if you play Star Wars video games or you read Star Wars books, Vader continues to just be scary. And
his own people are scared of him.
Yeah,
I think is a huge part of how you know he's scary.
He's legitimately terrifying, and kind of different than some of our other villains, because Vader in a lot of ways is hiding who he is. He doesn't want you to empathize or sympathize with him because he doesn't care. Which is really interesting, because I think that when you get to know Anakin Skywalker, you actually do start to empathize a little bit with Anakin and how he falls, and and then you even more so when you see him save his son and he's redeemed. He's a very interesting villain that is interesting in very different ways from the other villains on our list, I think. Next up is Magneto. This one was kind of an easy one for me to put on the list. I think that Magneto is just simply one of the more interesting villains. Having this Holocaust survivor that is legitimately just sees parallels in a lot of problems in society, and is not going to put up with it, but has, I mean, it's an interesting line to walk. And I think that it's so funny because there are so many people who are just like, Magneto's right, and in a lot of ways, like other villains that we'll talk, like Magneto is right. Like there were legitimate signs. He was right. It's the ends and the thing that you're trying to do.
Means don't match up.
Yeah. The next on my list is probably the most hated character on either of these lists.
I would say that this is the least redeemable villain we've ever talked about on this show.
One of the things that I tried to do, when I had Vader and I had Magneto, was like, well, these are very different types of villains, right? Like Vader is mysterious and scary. Magneto is face up and has a just cause. Yeah, and then so I was like, well, what is there a different kind of villain than those two? And this is the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, this is the scary one, and I would say that your villain here is the scary one because
I would use the word putrid.
Well, no, the really scary part is that we all know this villain in real life,
and that's Dolores Umbridge. I specifically, the book Umbridge to me is like, oh, they're actually both bad though. Like I'm shaking, I get so mad.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, yeah, book Umbridge is just awful. Holy cow. I would say that the movie Umbridge is only slightly more redeeming because the amount of time it takes to watch her scenes in all the movies is usually less than the amount of time it takes me to read all of her scenes in the books.
Yeah, I think Umbridge is on this bracket for the, like, I tweeted this a couple weeks ago, but like when I found out that Dolores got sentenced to like 25 years or something in Azkaban, I was so upset. I was like, she lived. That woman got to live.
Centaurs should have gotten her.
Like,
just to start.
Well, we already knew that the Centaurs didn't, right? Because she's at Dumbledore's funeral.
I know, it's a disappointment. She survives even by the end of that book, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I hate her. And honestly, like you said, like we've all dealt with these type of people, and it's so disgusting. Like it boils your blood in a way that I don't think any of the other characters do on here for me. My next one is Killmonger, and I actually specifically have the MCU version. I'm not super familiar with Black Panther, so I didn't want to, go outside of Michael B. Jordan's performance, and like I'm specifically talking about Killmonger in that film, in the context of the MCU. I think that he is interesting. I think that he is correct. I think that I don't even know. Yeah, he's another one where like he was wronged in a lot of ways. He is right that that his people are being selfish and they need to share what they have with the world. So And then next up on my list is Lex Luthor, but specifically the Smallville one, played by Michael Rosenbaum. The best portrayal of Lex Luthor. It is not close. Watching him be best friends and fall, be best friends with Clark Kent and fall is one of the best performances ever for TV. And I was actually just watching something on how all superhero TV shows should always be compared to Smallville to keep them in check. And I think that Michael just did a fantastic job. He was both terrifying, funny, charming. He was a good villain. You were rooting for him and
charming
against him.
Charming is an underrated villain trait.
It really is, right?
Yeah, your next one also goes deep on charm, I would say.
In some ways, yes. It depends on which side of him you're on.
It's also a can't look away because what's happening is so compelling type of charm. It's the actual just idea of magical charm almost of you can't hypnotism.
Yeah. So next up we have Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I think that what's funny about this one is I'm even more enamored with this current version that we have of Thrawn than the legacy version that we have of Thrawn. And for those who know, Thrawn is the admiral that originally took over the remnants, the Imperial remnant, after he was the last Grand Admiral and took over the Imperial remnant after Return of the Jedi. And his first 3 books, the Thrawn trilogy, are honestly just Star Wars novel staples that were just astounding.
These are the legacy ones?
The legacy ones. Now he has his new trilogy. The first one's called Thrawn. The second one's called Thrawn Ascend, or Thrawn something. There's 3 of them. The first one is when he joins the Empire. The second one, he goes on a mission with Vader. And the third one, he's being accused of treason to the Empire. And it is fantastic. Obviously, you might have seen him in Rebels, where he is fantastic throughout
where I'm most familiar with him.
He's fantastic throughout the entire show. But he is one of those villains that is also terrifying. But he's very cunning and deliberate. He's a pretty good adversary, I think. And one of the more interesting characters. We'll kind of put people head to head later, but
he has I think my favorite aspect of is he rarely underestimates his enemies. Does he not? Does he do that a lot more in the books than he does in the?
No, I think you're right. Not only does he not underestimate them, he gives them just the right amount of credit all the time.
Yeah.
He's not overestimating them. He's not underestimating them. It's funny because in Rebels, the only reason that he fails is the failure of his own people.
Yeah, his people suck, not him, for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely what's going on at all times, for sure.
Yeah. And if you kind of, we got to get off the topic because I'll just talk about Thrawn way too much. Next up, I have Darth Treya. Darth Treya is easily the most quotable character on my list. She has some banger of a lines, and she is the villain in. It's hard to explain. Some minor spoilers, but you actually figure it out pretty early into the video game, so it doesn't really matter. In Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, Sith Lords, the first partner that you end up having is a Force-sensitive being named Kreia, who is a blind woman who hates the Jedi, that works with you and knows all about the Sith. And you learn later that she used to be a Sith Lord, and her name is Darth Treya. And she is manipulative, cunning, smart, intelligent, scary. She is one heck of a villain, and it is such a contrast from the first game, where I don't know that Darth Malik was that interesting of a villain. Like that's not the compelling part of that story, and she is the compelling part of the second story. I can't hear you.
That was one of the challenges of coming up with these lists at all, right? Is that like it's not just about looking for what your favorite stories are, but what your favorite stories are that actually have villains that like are interesting. Because there's a lot of like my favorite video games out there that like I don't have anything for their villains. Like, you know, Breath of the Wild, maybe the best game of all time. I don't exactly think Calamity Ganon deserves to be talked about on this list, right? So
yeah, I was actually thinking about how uninteresting Ganondorf was while making this list. It was actually one of the thoughts. Like I was like, man, Ganon's kind of dumb. Like, not the most interesting of villains.
It's possible that like his best version is Wind Waker, which wouldn't be like saying very much. So like,
and then my last villain on my list is Saren, who is the villain from Mass Effect 1 specifically. Mass Effect 1 has a lot of problems, like you can watch my review, but Saren is, I don't know, he is one of the more interesting villains, and probably one of the, it was funny, I remember reading a walkthrough at a part I got stuck at, and I read the chapter for what I had just completed, and in the walkthrough, they're like, yeah, we know, like, this just happened for you, the game just got really good, the story just got really interesting, and it has to do with Saren. He is what is called a Spectre, so he is like the highest level of clearance of these commanders in this intergalactic, space force, basically, and he betrays the basically everyone. Like he becomes the ultimate baddie, and it's really interesting to see what he goes through, and yeah, that's my list, Wes. What about you?
That's awesome. Mine, I'll present in alphabetical order, so there's absolutely no way anyone would know A, the order I came up with them, or B, which ones I think are best. Which means I'm starting with Azula of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And Azula is, again, a different villain than most of the villains on this list because Azula is a caged animal. She is ferocious. Whenever she fights, she is shooting to kill 100% of the time. I think that one of the most compelling parts about her is how undone she comes towards the end of the show. How, when she is unsupported by her people, how alone she feels. But, like, when she has those people by her side, she's, like, unstoppable. And it's not even that those people left her because they're like, oh, you're bad. It's Azula actively pushing them away the whole time. In a really powerful way. But, like, she's still, like, of these people, like, I can't reason with Azula, right? Like, the most reasonable guy of all time, Uncle Iroh, won't reason with Azula.
Well, it's funny. There's a current TikTok meme where it takes the conversation between Uncle Iroh and Zuko, where they're like, if we go to the Earth Kingdom, we'll be captured and become war prisoners. And they're like, yes, but if we go to the Fire Nation, then we'll have to deal with Azula.
And they're like, let's go to the Earth Kingdom.
And then they're like, we're going to the Earth Kingdom. And it's just funny. It's like, it's very, I don't want to deal with Azula.
No, absolutely. Like, Azula is very terrifying. And, clearly sociopathic to such an extreme. And it's so, like, telling about how her environment just took her from the beginning, and, like, she picked up on every toxic thing that was being put down, even when it wasn't clear to a lot of other people what was going on. Yeah,
I think Azula is another one, like you said, that's definitely different from the type of villains on my list, and honestly, I think that often, villains. I mean, maybe she like kind of has. It's almost like she's like a mix between Killmonger and Dolores Umbridge, where like her circumstances made her who she was, and then you just are like, you're great, like you're nuts.
Yeah, like I pitied you for like 10 seconds until I really got to know you. Yeah, that's so true. Next on my list is the arc villain of the most successful video game franchise of all time. I'm hoping that's true because I just said the words and no one's confused.
It is not true. It is not.
The fact that that's not true is wrong.
I'm just saying that Pokemon is the most successful video game franchise.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, I don't mean Meowth.
Yeah.
The true villain of Pokemon. I do, in fact, mean Bowser. And I chose Bowser because I think that, like, few video games get to, like, pick the same villain over and over and over again and, like, them not feel very played out. Granted, they've had to use Bowser's kids. They've had to make hats relevant to Bowser and who he is. They've even told stories from Bowser's point of view in the Mario world. But across all of the games, like, Bowser's unrepentant, he's goal-oriented, and then when they're all done, they'll go play golf together.
It's kind of funny. I actually hope that on, like, my wish list of, like, potential Smash Bros. Fighters, I actually said Paper Bowser was, like, one of my top.
Paper Bowser? That's cool.
One of my top ones. So.
Do we have Paper Mario?
No.
So we have to get Paper Mario before we can get Paper Bowser, right?
I know. I actually don't know how Paper Mario is already not in Smash, but...
Yeah. And or, like, some of the other compelling, like, unique to Paper Mario characters. Yeah, I agree. Those would all be awesome things to see. But I think that, like, I don't want to... Everyone knows Bowser, but, like, the fact that everyone knows Bowser is the reason that I think he deserves to be on this list. He's such a threat. Like, the one Mario game I can think of off the top of my head that he's not, like, the villain of is Super Mario Sunshine. And that Mario, I mean, he's a good villain. Why is he doing his thing? Why can't he stop? Why is my life terrible now? But Bowser is such a good villain, and, clearly, if people didn't like Bowser, they wouldn't keep making games with him in it. The one after this list is my choice for my favorite Star Wars villain after all of the ones that Spencer stole from me, notably Darth Vader. Darth Vader, I think, would have been the overall pack one, pick one of villains of all time. The easiest slam dunk of this list. Maybe he wins, maybe he doesn't. But after Darth Vader in Star Wars, I'm picking Darth Maul, which is fascinating because in the movies, we've talked about this. Darth Maul, well, there's nothing. Absolute.
But enough that you wanted more.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to know more. And the moment they gave me more, I was hooked. From, like, Trash Centipede Darth Maul all the way up to...
Trash Centipede. I love it. Keep going.
To whatever we're going to be getting in the Obi-Wan series. I am so stoked to just see more Darth Maul on screen and rewatch Darth Maul on screen. And,
Nerd, you ready for the nerd fact of the week?
Okay.
So, in the fight scene in the final season of Clone Wars, between Ahsoka Tano and Darth Maul...
that one, okay.
That is actually motion captured, which is why it looks so different from the other fights in the Clone Wars, because the voice actors for Ahsoka Tano and Ray Park motion captured that fight.
Wow.
And it is beautiful.
I believe it. I will have to go watch this, but Darth Maul is amazing because he is... I mean, first off, I mean, Spencer might know more, but, like, I don't get that much of Sith who's no longer with the Sith as, like, as characters that I see. So, like, that's really interesting, and seeing, like, I mean, he fights Palpatine, right? Like, that's such a cool fight. The way that he, until Ezra clearly sees that it's not what's going on, the way that he seduces Ezra Bridger is really cunning. Just his, like, mixture between kind of, like, these inhuman choices and then, like, very clear emotion that he's playing out all the time is always very fascinating to me with Darth Maul.
It's Legends now. It's not canon, but basically, originally it was Palpatine had taken Darth Maul as, like, a baby, and basically just raised him to be a weapon of the Sith. So he like others on this list is completely made of his circumstances, and so in the scene, major spoilers, fam, but Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul. in it's in Rebels. I think it's the season 2 finale. It's either season 2 or season 3, but it is like one of these beautiful moments where, you know, once Maul realizes he's gonna die, he lets go, and is basically cheering for this chosen one to beat the Emperor and to bring balance to the Force. And there's this moment of respect between him and Obi-Wan that I think is really beautiful.
Sweet. I wonder how much of that is going to replay itself when we get to see it happen for new canon.
Well, no, that piece is canon. That
is
piece
it in books?
That's in Rebels. When
in Rebels, sure.
Yeah. But I also think that Darth Maul has like, I think we talked about this a little bit, but like, I remember the first time I saw that double lightsaber, and I like, there's TikToks and like YouTube videos of people losing their freaking minds, but it's so cool. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, new lightsaber stuff is the hotness, and double lightsaber will always be the hottest of the hotness.
Oh, man.
Such a way to come back.
Yeah, you gotta play. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. Like, there are 2 Star Wars characters specifically missing from my list. One of them is Jason Solo, but that's because I don't believe he's actually a villain. But that's a story for another time. Nicole Bolas is your next one.
Yeah, so Nicole Bolas is probably the archest of villains in all of Magic the Gathering. He is one of the oldest characters in Magic the Gathering, appearing in the Legend set as an Elder Dragon. Way back when, and I don't think he mattered very much then. He doesn't actually begin to matter in the storyline of Magic until probably, 15 years into the game. But his whole thing, for those of you who do not follow the story very well, is he became a planeswalker, someone who could move between the worlds of Magic at a time when planeswalkers were like gods. They had all of the power. They could reshape worlds. They could just act in such a powerful way. And as a dragon, Nicole Bolas is a dragon. As a dragon, he's even more powerful than like the human planeswalkers at that time. And there is a point in the Magic story where something changes about this multiverse, and like planeswalkers are just that. They're they're powerful, but whatever their like natural powers are is kind of their powers, and then they can travel. During that like those moments that Nicole Bolas like is losing that power, he like sets into play this like huge plan to regain that near godlike ability. And he doesn't make it, and is currently in prison, watched over by a different dragon of immense ability. But Nicole Bolas,
time travel be like that sometimes.
But Nicole Bolas like orchestrates just some of the most wild like betrayals and like occurrences in all of Magic's storyline. I think the most notable being brokering Liliana's contract with these 5 demons that give her powers, and then encouraging Liliana to go like in very subtle ways to go kill all of them. And then when Liliana finally kills the last one, all of a sudden her contract is defaulted to Nicole Bolas, and he's like, I own you now.
Hey, if it wasn't for Nicole Bolas, Sarkrim wouldn't have become unbroken, and I probably wouldn't have ever gone to a Pro Tour. So
that's super fair. I would also say that Nicole Bolas has some of my favorite Magic cards of all time. Like the original Nicole Bolas Planeswalker card.
Sweet.
Holds just the best memories for me.
Ravager, sweet. I think that also like Sarkhan the Mad is sweet. I think that Tezra, Agent of Bolas. Agent of Bolas is like actually a really interesting story as far as like, corrupting Tezzeret. Nicole Bolas is he's kind of like the Palpatine of...
Very much so. Totally.
Of Magic the Gathering.
With, like... Honestly, I think... And Palpatine doesn't make this list.
No, I think
Which is telling.
Well, I also think that Palpatine... I can't swear on this podcast, so... I mean, I could. It's my podcast. I can do whatever I want, but I'm not going to swear. But, Palpatine is a little B, so...
Yeah. Yeah, Palpatine's. I mean, Bolas is a pretty scared individual in a lot of ways, but he he has this he has the charisma and like this presence of like there's no way you can touch me.
Yeah,
and it really plays out. It's really cool.
I'm also glad that you picked Bolas over some of the other magic villains that you could have picked.
He's also like a specific character. I think that a lot of the usually magic stories are about forces more than they're about individual characters, especially how they play out at the set level. And Bolas is a force unto himself, and a lot of those other forces don't have like as notable singular characters to pick. But Bolas is an iconic Magic the Gathering villain, and I think truly has some great long-term plans that are always very interesting.
Yeah, I wish that I could recommend the War of the Spark book
which we can't
to people, but it is actually the worst book I've ever read, which makes me really sad. So
certainly the second one is in the worst books ever.
Is there a sequel to that?
Well, the sequel's the one that truly blew up in the face of everyone.
Hold on, time out.
There was War of the Spark and then War of the Spark Forsaken.
There's a sequel?
We don't speak of it.
I'm like pulling up my Audible right now just to make sure that I get the name right.
Greg Weisman.
Which, he's such a good writer.
He was working under some really, I think, tough circumstances and was asked to do some things that I don't even know if he agreed with. I have no idea. But
the book that I'm talking about
that made everyone mad.
Is Greg Weisman. It's War of the Spark Ravnica.
There was a sequel where they kind of do the aftermath of it all.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's just for those who are watching on YouTube. I'm talking about this thing.
Yeah, War of the Spark Ravnica. Yeah, not a fantastic book, but Nicole Bolas's plan, which comes to fruition there, is a fantastic plan.
It's so funny, too, because, like, the story of War of the Spark is so good. So, like, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know, it's frustrating. But my next villain is massive. Explaining anything about him is massive spoilers for Spencer if he ever watches more Naruto, but I don't know how much is that's going to happen or if it matters. He's had his chance.
Isn't this the fox?
Orochimaru? No, the fox is by the end of Naruto, the fox is...
the fox is Naruto at the end. Is Naruto at the end, right?
No. The fox and Naruto get along very well at the end.
Doesn't he, like, absorb him to go, like, Super Saiyan or whatever?
Don't worry about it. Really don't worry about it.
All right.
No, this villain is way cooler. This is Orochimaru. He is your totally cool snake guy. And...
Okay, I actually have seen episodes with...
Yeah. Orochimaru is a spectacular character. His whole thing is he's one of those people who achieves immortality by taking over the bodies of people, basically, and more or less cultivating those people to be the perfect body for him. But he has this like just intense, unkillable ability that kind of always manifests as like another snake coming out of his mouth. He's a very creepy character for a lot of Naruto, and most of the moves he does are like he shows up for like an episode, touches a character, and sets them on an arc that lasts a long time with a plan all unto himself. And he mostly does this with Sasuke, who he's got his eyes on. But Orochimaru, like his kind of introduction to the show is in this like deep forest kind of arc where they're like all fighting in trios in this forest trying to overcome each other. But then Naruto and Sasuke, I think Sakura is resting during this, have to like contend with Orochimaru in this like extra situation. Like he shouldn't be there, and like he's just overpowering them in like these insane ways as like, you know, just like ever more snakes pour forth from him. But his whole aesthetic's really cool. Once again, he's sly and manipulative, and often enough presents a compelling enough point that you almost want to go along with what he's doing, but you know that he's really just in it for himself. So you're at the last moment, you're like, wait, no, not that. But Orochimaru is probably, he's not the overall villain of all of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, but I think he's the most compelling of them. It not necessarily in like his stories that great, but that like as a villain on screen, you never know what he's going to do next, and it's always very creepy. Speaking of very creepy villains, what do you think of small, polite children that turn out to be insanely powerful and can send their presence, thousands of miles away from themselves?
Yeah, so Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, we did it a podcast on, and I actually think we didn't give Pride enough time. I mentioned the kind of the arc at the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
But I really don't think we gave Pride enough time. I am interested to know, of the, I don't know how to say this, of the
homunculi,
like, why would the father or whatever almost Wrath almost did make my list.
Wrath's a great character, but like I feel like for me, a lot of what I want to pick a character for is their like ability to unsettle me.
Sure, and it's funny because the one that it was the most interesting to me was neither Pride nor that. So I was kind of curious how you came to your decision, because Greed to me was also like I
don't see Greed as a villain by the end of the show is the problem.
See, that's where I thought you were going to go, is because Greed just turns into like,
I like Greed. That's the problem.
Yeah,
like I think Greed is an anti-hero. And anti-heroes and villains is a little bit iffy. And
okay.
Anti-heroes tend to be way more compelling on average than true villains, right? Like, it takes a lot of work for an anti-hero to graduate to villains, and usually they get worse as they do it.
Yeah.
But like Pride is an unrepentant villain to the end. Straight up eats one of the other homunculi to gain power. When he's possessing Alphonse is like some really truly like tense episodes in that dark forest. And he's also like got this compelling weakness of just being a little kid as well.
Yeah, I think that Pride's weakness being Pride was interesting.
Yeah.
I think Pride is legitimately a great character, and it's funny. I do think that similar to kind of other things that we talked about in this, I don't know that Brotherhood is stood up on its villains, but it does have good villains, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I mean, looking around like lists that people does the father who turns his girl into a chimera is high up on those lists, but he's like a one episode villain, right? Like,
it's a one episode villain that like
who's created the saddest moment of anything we've ever watched.
Yeah,
but,
it's just the Dolores Umbridge level of hatred for that guy more than anything.
Yeah. But Pride is fascinating. Certainly, he's a stand-in for a lot of Full Metal Alchemist, but the problem being that the homunculus is not a good villain, not an interesting villain. He's just a little bit too power hungry, reaches too far, decides he's gonna
some Icarus level stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know. This is not that interesting. Another villain that I struggled adding to him to this list, but I was having trouble finding characters I really wanted to talk about, and I chose Thanos. I think because of his, like, again, stature as a villain.
It's funny because I actually read up on Thanos after Infinity War, before Endgame, and I actually don't know if the movies do him justice.
Yeah, like, he's like scarier in the comics.
He's a bad dude.
Yeah, I mean, it's a clear piece of work, right? Like,
and the thing is that kind of like your next villain, I think that he sees a legitimate problem in his mind and tries to fix it.
Yeah.
I think that it's really easy to poke holes in Thanos' logic, because like
once you can do anything, why not just add resources?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that was really dumb.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the core piece of Thanos, right? Like the vast majority of villains, right? They are accruing power for one of two reasons. They're accruing power to have power, or they're accruing power to do something with it, right? We both like the ones that accrue power to do something with it better than the ones that accrue power to have power. But like Thanos literally wins the accruing power game, right? Like he has it all, has the ability to do anything.
Yeah, let's actually. I'm just
and
gonna
he
break
fumbles
this.
it.
I'm just gonna break this down. Vader accrued power to do something. Magneto, same thing. Umbridge,
Power to power. Power to have power.
Power to have power. Killmonger, power to do something. Lex Luthor, actually power to do something if we look at the Smallville version.
Sure.
Grand Admiral Thrawn, power to do something. Darth Treya, I don't know.
Okay.
That's why she's interesting, though. Saren, very different. I don't want to spoil the video game for people, but like, already had power and got corrupted, and was like the corruption piece is very interesting. Azula, power to have power.
Oh yeah.
Bowser. I don't know that it's a.
He already has kind of a lot of power. It seems like it's what is he doing with it now,
Yeah.
and it's like very frivolous what he's doing with it.
Yeah. Darth Maul is interesting because he loses everything.
Yeah.
And what he's trying,
Twice.
and then tries to get power to do something,
Yeah.
but doesn't have any, like, he's just, so.
Yeah, he's mostly a power to do something guy, but
also
I think he gets there eventually. Like I think he starts with power for power.
Well, he already has it. That's what I'm saying. He loses.
Yeah.
Nicole Bolas is power for power, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. He's totally power for power.
I don't know anything.
Orochimaru is power for power. His thing is knowledge. He wants to survive as long as he can to learn as much as he can.
I think all of the homunculi, for what it's worth, are power to do something, but they also don't have context. So they just appear as power for power. For what it's worth.
I think they're interesting. Yeah, totally. Because like we see them in a moment where they're actually just puppets of something.
Exactly, and so it's like, I think Greed is like a really good example of this. That once he's one step removed, he's like, "Wait, I'm not doing like this is."
Yeah.
Like I can be Greed, like I'm gonna be Greed, but like I'm not doing your like. And I think that of all of them, except for maybe Envy, I think Envy might be the exception to this. I guess we don't get to see that though, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But Thanos, I think is an interesting place where
I really want to say that Thanos said he was accruing power the whole time to do something with it, and then it's hard to say that after he's accomplished it.
But so it's so hard. Well, that's not true, right? Because like he straight up lets the Avengers kill him.
Yeah. But like it's this like way of like I've done what I'm gonna do. I have peace of mind.
I think that Thanos
power for peace of mind is a weird one.
It's so funny because Thanos gets set on this track, and he will not be deviated from it, no matter what anyone or anything
says. Yeah,
like there's no deviation, and like it's funny. I'm actually really sad for what it's worth, for a multitude of reasons, and I'm sure that we'll get comments that I have to disapprove on YouTube for this, but like I actually was really interested in seeing where Johnny Depp took Grindelwald in Fantastic Beasts, because I think that there's a lot of space for those villains. I think there's a lot of space for villains who are power hungry because they're power hungry, but are interesting and charming.
Beyond that, yeah.
Because I find that the charming ones are typically the ones that are charming because they have like a more
they have to convince people
to
get where they're going.
But like it's funny because like if you look at like Voldemort, and we're going a little deep here, but like if you look at Voldemort, it feels like he was really good at a younger age at convincing people, and then he amassed so much power he just didn't have to work at it anymore. Yeah. Because then people started joining him out of fear. And Thanos has very clearly convinced a large sum of people that he's right.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I ever saw why.
Yeah.
So
I think the promise, the reason that they saw that they were going to be the not snapped out of existence ones, which I don't think held up. Right?
Well, it's so
Half
funny
of them
too because
exist
even Thanos, there was no guarantee that even himself that he wasn't going to be the one snapped away.
Yeah.
So,
but it's
so funny.
villain,
everybody knows that listens to this podcast knows who the last one is.
A, because it's in alphabetical order, so we don't have a lot of options left, and B, because I talk about him too much. Yes, no, I have a massive crush on Zaheer, everyone. But yeah, I think that Zaheer is just another villain that I find very interesting, and I think he's an interesting one because he is granted power. Right? We arrive at Zaheer at like the most broken he could ever be, and all of a sudden, one day, he's never going to change his circumstances. The next, he has everything he needs to change his circumstances, and then he chooses to do something about it. And it's fascinating because what he chooses to do about it is change the world in what could be a really good way, but he does it in such a horrifically evil way that like even people who like are, I don't know, agree on every front are just can't even stand by it. And he does it in a really upfront way. Like I think that the villain from Kuvira, who you are very close to putting on your list, starts with I'm helping everyone, and everyone's like very slowly like, oh no, you're not.
I think Kuvira is just a better villain than Azula. Like I think she's just.
Oh, I think Kuvira is a great villain, but I wanted to have one of each show, and I also think that Azula is going to be way more fun to talk about in our bracket than Kuvira would be.
Yeah.
And I think Zaheer is as well because he has this like very serene side of him that he can drop at a moment's notice.
It's so funny because Zaheer is like, I mean, we talked about Zaheer so much on our podcast that it's hard not to repeat stuff, but Zaheer has this, I don't know, a demeanor that I like.
Yeah.
It's hard, we talk about charm, right? Zaheer is not. I don't know that Zaheer is charming.
No.
I don't even know that he's that likable.
He's in control, is what he is.
But he is. Yeah, it's like
he's like reassuring almost.
Yeah, it's almost like if Mark Zuckerberg wasn't a douchebag.
I really can't empathize with that statement, but yeah, sure. Like I can't imagine. I don't know. Like I don't know what you could change without undoing my ability to know who he is.
I'm just saying that at some point, the thing is that
you want Zaheer. You wish Zaheer took a path where we could like he could be like a likable character.
It's so funny too because one small thing changes. I mean, to be fair, he did take a path, right? He still helped the Avatar and
yeah. And totally, I think that the reason he did it in a lot of ways is like it makes sense as well, right? Like it's awesome. I think that like Zaheer is cool because his values kind of drove his choices, and he didn't see a way he could work within a system to his values, so he had to break it. Right. First off, he's already like lost that chance. And I don't know what like. I wish I knew their backstory better. Like I wish that was told because they are very compelling. That group.
Yeah.
But Zaheer is fascinating, and I love talking about him. I love thinking about him. But that does mean that I'm through my list, Spencer, and you know what that means.
All right. Coming in our first match, West.
So I don't have this in front of me, so
you don't. You're gonna.
Oh man, this is all surprises for me.
Yeah.
And it's my guys versus your guys, right?
Some of them are not. Some of them.
It's all randomized. Excellent.
Yeah, it's all randomized like you wanted. We have Darth Treya versus Nicole Bolas.
Okay.
So I will quickly explain my side, and then you can quickly explain your side, and then we will vote, and we will have a tiebreaker of some kind if we get to a tie at any point. So.
Sure. Yeah.
I do think that Treya wins this one for a couple of reasons. One, I think that you obviously haven't played the game yet, but Treya manipulates just like Bolas does, but she does it to perfection. like straight up perfection to the point where you just kind of want to. You're just on her. Like you believe. Like you. There are many situations in this video game where you just end up being like, "Yo, she's right," and we're gonna join her. We're gonna do what she wants. And also she is terrifying the leader of, this trio of Sith Lords that are all on by their own right empowering different parts of the dark side, and she is the master of her part in a way that, while Nicole Bolas is a puppeteer, I think that Treya, in all honesty, does a better job of it while also being on the front lines. Like, Nicole Bolas makes himself removed from it, but Treya actually impacts things directly.
That's a compelling point. There's one advantage Treya has as a frontline manipulator that Nicole Bolas lacks.
Not being a dragon?
Not being a dragon, yeah.
Sure.
Treya can actually put herself in those situations without being like, "There's a freaking dragon there."
Yeah. And he's a large dragon. He's not.
He's a big dragon. No, he's not small at all. So like that, I think is a confounding challenge for Bolas, right? Like I think he has to work through intermediaries in so many ways because like he just can't do some of these things himself.
Even more compelling, I think, is the fact that like Treya completely changes who she is, and the only person that knows who she is like her direct apprentice, and like she's straight up just in front of the Jedi Council half the game, and they don't know who she is.
Sure, I mean that is awesome, and like certainly Nicole Bolas never like gets to that level of like full scale infiltration, and certainly. I actually think that his most compelling stories that spin off of him and like the people who work for him are all when the people who work for him realize they don't want to work for him anymore. But that's also really interesting, right? Like I think that like probably the peak magic story ever, right, is Ixalan. Is Jace loses his memory, Vraska, who's here on a mission for Bolas, picks him up. Jace doesn't remember anything, and they fall in love. Right, and by the time Jace remembers anything, they still are in love, and that the tragic choice at the end of the story is that the best way to get one over Bolas is to seal away that relationship in Vraska's mind. Right, and that's a fantastic story where Bolas isn't even present, but his threat looms so large that like it changes the way things play out in a really compelling way, and in fact. Jace has just arrived on this world because he's been thoroughly smushed by Nicole Bolas in his first ever frontline action in the story. And it's so like that setup is amazing, but I could see what you mean. Honestly, the statement of is in front of the Jedi Council for half of the game is really impressive. That said, I actually should know for certain that the Jedi Council cannot figure out if a Sith is in front of them, because boy, did they suck at that canonically in the actual movies, as we've recently talked about. So maybe it's not that impressive.
It kind of just depends. Like so here's the thing. I think that Nicole Bolas is a great villain for Magic, especially when you consider the number of things that he has his hands in, right?
Yeah.
But if I look at like the things that I like in villains, like there's never been a
relatable.
There's never been a time I empathized with Nicole Bolas or like rooted for him or considered if he was right.
No. There's one time that I've ever empathized with Nicole Bolas, and it was a fabrication. It was excellent. They did a story of Nicole Bolas and Ugin as babies that then gets planted in like the mind of like a Tarkir dragon storyteller. And it's like one of the best. It was an amazing chapter.
All right. Who you voting for?
I think you have me convinced at the goes so completely under, and like as a surprise in a video game, that sounds incredible.
It is. And like the thing is like even once you know that she's a Sith Lord, you still get surprised at the end.
That said, You got to start thinking, Spencer. You've got to start thinking. Which Star Wars characters are you going to kill off in this one?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
We're going to have some challenges up the road here.
I don't know.
All right, who's next? Who voted for Darth Treya?
I gotta figure out how to move this along. Let's see here. There we go. All right, Darth Treya won. Next up is, I in my opinion, really easy, but I'm interested to hear, and I'm gonna let you go first on this one. Maybe I'll go first, but I think we're just gonna agree here. We have Dolores Umbridge versus Pride.
Oh, no, it's easy.
Yeah, I think it's super easy, but I want you to go first.
Oh, yeah. I think that Pride is cool. And, like, Pride has, like, his scary moments. He has his moments where, like, he's almost relatable, but not really. He has his moments where, like, you're kind of shocked that he did that. But, like, man, can Pride not rise to the level of, like, I am so unhappy you're on screen right now, but that makes this better, that Dolores Umbridge does.
Yeah, it's funny, because I think that I hate Pride, and I hate Dolores Umbridge. Here's the thing. Dolores
provokes just the most evocative reaction
I don't know.
You could hope for.
Yeah, listen, we all don't like the stuff that She Who Must Not Be Named has put out into the world over the last, 2 years. Yeah. But dang, did she nail the writing of this villain. Here's the thing, is that it is a different kind of scary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's why do people trust this person who clearly should not be trusted, who clearly is causing problems?
And just manipulative and vile and...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, her, like, the latter third of, like... oftentimes Order of the Phoenix is one of my favorite Harry Potter books when I reread it, and it's because the latter third of the book, her comeuppance, is so good.
It's funny
Weasleys going off is so good. It's so good because Dolores sucks.
I don't know if we haven't done Harry Potter yet for the show, but just so the listeners know, there are books that my wife and I listen to books when we go to sleep because it's something I've done as my whole life. The 7 Harry Potter books, the 4 Aragon books. We listen to the Twilight books sometimes because my wife's a huge fan, and I don't care, I'm falling asleep, and and then we started Lord of the Rings and some other stuff too that we tried, but we actually couldn't listen to number 5 for a little while because because my anxiety was so bad, and Umbridge just I would just have nightmares.
Sure.
So we're both voting Umbridge on this one?
Yeah, easy Umbridge. Yeah. Maybe Umbridge is going to cruise through.
I don't think so. I actually...
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine...
I think she'll just lose to
there are head-to-heads that I can't... Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it could be pretty quick. All right, so the next 2 are both mine, and...
which means I get a pick, right?
I mean, I'll defend both of them.
All right, who are they?
All right, we have Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Uh-huh.
And Lex Luthor from Smallville.
Okay, well, my mind's already made up, but that's because I know one of the characters.
Have you never watched Smallville?
No.
Okay. Woo! Okay, so I actually think these 2 characters... This is a hard matchup because these 2 are really similar. They are both...
Bald.
Is Thrawn bald? I don't know if Thrawn's bald, buddy. Anyway.
Maybe I just totally... Thrawn does have hair. You're right. Thrawn
neither's Lex Luthor as in episode 1.
All right, well, maybe I'm wrong. They're both alike in that they have hair.
But Lex is bald 5 minutes in. So they're really similar characters in the fact that they're both planners. I think that they both believe that they're right. They're amassing power for the greater good type of thing, and they both have
way less powers than their nemesis.
Yeah, that's true too. And also, they both have much bigger baddies ahead of them. In Smallville, the biggest baddie to start with is actually Lex's dad, Lionel Luthor. and like when I say bad, like he's like a bad.
In these parallels, does that make Darth Vader Grand Admiral Thrawn's daddy?
I was thinking more Emperor.
Oh, sure.
I
don't like to think of the fact that Palpatine is anyone's daddy, but it's technically true.
Here's the thing. I think that as far as portrayals, if we're going specifically with Lex Luthor from Smallville, Mike Rosenbaum, like they're going to make a Smallville cartoon, and they literally wouldn't do it without him because he was so good.
Okay.
And the character themselves, I'm gonna vote for Grand Admiral Thrawn just because Mike quit and like left us hanging on like a huge pivotal.
So we're getting more Thrawn, but we're never getting more of this Lex Luthor.
We are getting more. It'll be in cartoon form, but like he left us at like a pivotal moment in the show, and like almost ruined the show. So,
well, you have it here, folks. Grand Admiral Thrawn
didn't ruin
beat Superman's nemesis.
I mean, that could just be true anyway. The next one is also two of mine. We have Saren versus Killmonger. I actually think this one's not close. I think that Killmonger is right, and like the story of Saren is very interesting, and even as a villain, he's very interesting, and like the trouble he causes for the protagonist. But I think that Killmonger in the MCU offers a question that needs to be answered, and it needs to be answered quickly, because everything's about to change. If you look at, where Wakanda was at during the time of the film, and where Wakanda needed to end up, and where the world needed to end up to prepare for Thanos. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that they would have gotten there without him.
Sure.
So, I don't know. You don't know who Saren is, so I assume you're just voting for.
I'm happy to give it to Killmonger. Yeah, this one was one. I mean, and honestly, my overall number of times I've watched Black Panther is clearly wrong. So, because I think I'm at 1. So I should know more Killmonger as well.
Whoa, you've only.
Yeah, I know.
That's such a good movie, dude. I like don't you like the Lion King? I don't watch
movies.
That's
my problem.
Do you like the Lion King?
Yeah, I like the Lion King.
It's the same movie. Just watch it.
Well, what a great movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I've already watched it. I've watched the Lion King a bunch of times.
It's so funny. I already know how these next two are gonna go. So next up we have Orochimaru versus Thanos. Go ahead, defend, talk.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that Thanos is going like the same way that the most ambitious crossover of all time is any Shonen Jump magazine. No. No, that is the finale of the Avengers series in 3-part harmony. And Thanos is the big bad of all of that, but we didn't show up to the Avengers for Thanos. We showed up to the Avengers for literally everyone else. Orochimaru shapes the entirety of the series of Naruto, never stops being creepy, always has a lasting impact upon the second most important character, Sasuke. The number of times he has come out of a snake's mouth is just enough to give me nightmares. I don't know. Like, there's just something about a snake vomiting a dude. There's just something about a snake vomiting a dude. I vote for Orochimaru.
I don't know anything about him, so I would vote for Thanos. But we got our first tie. I do have myself a dice.
Can you snap a snake?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's Thanos.
I mean, Thanos definitely beats Orochimaru on the head-to-head. I think that should be our tiebreaker.
Oh. I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's a fair tiebreaker.
Yeah. The heads-up fight is definitely the tiebreaker.
All right. Then
always.
Thanos definitely moves on, right?
Yeah. I mean, Thanos has to be clearly outshone as a villain before he loses almost.
All right. The next one, I already know who we're both going to vote for, but I'll just tell you it is Zaheer versus Bowser.
Well, Bowser came to play, but like, the number of times he's lost, he's very used to it.
Yeah, he's used to the cell. I agree. I don't even know that we need to discuss this one.
No, this one's... We like Bowser. Bowser was good to have on the list, but he was not supposed to get out of round 1.
All right, you need to defend Azula against the Darth Vader.
Okay, I can't.
Hey, in a head-to-head fight, she has lightning bending.
They can both throw a hell of a tantrum.
Yeah, that's true.
They both
are terrifying.
Are absolutely terrifying. I
think the thing here is that I
like Azula's friends better.
Yeah, that's true. I think that Azula doesn't have any mystery behind her, and also I maybe empathize
She's
with
no
her
one's dad.
Yeah, that's true. She's nobody's daddy. I agree. I think that Vader is the better villain, but I don't know that Azula was expected to carry as much weight as Vader.
Yeah. Azula ran up against the number 1 overall seed, so that's tough, buddy.
Yeah. And then we have a really hard one, in my opinion. We have Magneto versus Darth Maul.
Wow. Yeah. No. This one's the one. This one's hard.
I'm gonna defend Magneto here.
Okay.
I think that Magneto. I mean, they both do this though. But I do think that Magneto is more relatable in the way that
he has something to protect.
Yeah, I think that he is so... They're both victims of their circumstance in a lot of ways, but I've never once thought Darth Maul is right.
Yeah, I've just thought that Darth Maul, I root for Darth Maul because I like him I like him a little more than I like his enemies. But Darth Maul's a coward.
Yeah, I think that Maul... Yeah, I don't know that I've... I mean, Magneto is terrifying. Darth Maul can be terrifying too, but Magneto checks all of the villain boxes for me.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, right, the strength of X-Men in so many ways is Magneto and Zaheer, right? Their interaction, their compelling duality.
Yeah.
Their ability to work together when they need to.
Yeah. I'm also biased. My first quote-unquote date with my wife was to X-Men First Class, where we also maybe got some of the best Magneto Xavier ever.
Yeah, great film.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to suggest that you are wrong on Magneto. Magneto deserves to be in this list. Maul is our umpteenth Star Wars character on the list.
I will
speak in favor of Maul for a minute.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Maul would be half the characters on this freaking.
Oh yeah, no. I think that Maul he's ruthless. He is conniving. He is, once he sets his mind to doing something, he usually achieves it. And he is totally unmoored by any sense of what he should do. And that makes him dangerous. Magneto is predictable in a lot of ways.
It's funny. I think that there's
Magneto actually talks to politicians in a way that Maul would not.
Yeah, there are things. I think that, for what it's worth, that there's very little that we could say about Maul that isn't true of Magneto. But I don't know that the things that we could say about Maul make Maul a more compelling villain than Magneto.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, it just depends on what you look. We just, smashed on Dolores Umbridge and said yes to her. But I think that as you get further down the list and, these characters move on, it starts to be less about either the hatred of them or the fear of them. And it becomes about, how many boxes do they check? And I think... I actually would vote for Maul over Umbridge, for example. I actually think that...
I think you can tell more stories with Maul.
Right, exactly. You are one track with Umbridge, and I think that while she was probably going to beat a lot of the people in round one, I already know round two matchup, so do you, but I'm only just making it out. I'm going to vote Magneto here, but I think that Maul got the short. Just like Azula, for what it's worth. I think Maul.
I think that like there's some tough opponents out there. They're not tying because I am voting for Magneto. Who wins in a fight? Is it just because Maul doesn't have a weapon?
I mean, he has the Force.
Sure. Half of the Force when you don't have a weapon is what Magneto can do.
That's true.
Magneto actually, I think, has a way cooler Force, but only metal, right? Like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Actually, wait.
Where are they fighting? Like, are all of
I bet that Maul is a carnivore. He's not an omnivore, and I bet he has such a high iron content in his blood, he loses instantly.
All right. Yeah, I would assume Magneto would win. But also, like, Magneto is, like, stronger than most of the peeps. Okay. We have Darth Treya versus Umbridge. These are both my characters. And I actually really liked what you said about Maul there versus Umbridge, because I think the same is true about Treya. Like,
more stories.
You could tell so much about this character. Like, this character was a member, was clear. I mean, we don't know, but like, we understand that her hatred of the Jedi comes from them being wrong, which they are. Like, she is right in so many different areas, where I just don't think Dolores Umbridge is right about anything.
Yeah.
I think
Dolores is like the metaphorical embodiment of like a speed bump.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, Dolores
She's just
Umbridge,
there to stop you from going where you want to go.
Dolores Umbridge had probably like one of the easier matchups against Pride in the first round, and the thing is like, I think Pride is like a pretty good villain. But I think that the strength of Darth Treya is that you don't hate her, and that you almost wish that you could fix the problems and like save her in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like you wish there was a clean version of her.
Yeah, like you wish that you could...
like I wish there was a clean version of Zaheer. Yeah.
Exactly. It's almost like that. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't want to save Umbridge at all. Like, I want Umbridge to be eaten by goats. Like,
Umbridge has nothing compelling once you strip away her badness.
No, just not at all.
She doesn't exist.
I think this is just a slam dunk for Treya.
Yeah, sure.
So,
who we got next?
Next up, we have a pretty tough one, and in my opinion, which is Grand Admiral Thrawn versus Killmonger. And I think that I should defend Killmonger and you should defend Thrawn, because I know way more about both of these characters.
Yep.
It seems like. So I'll do Killmonger first. Killmonger's father was murdered by, this person that's supposed to be his king. Then he's cast aside by the society and has to live in the slums. I mean, maybe that's the wrong word, but
on the outside.
Yeah, and just knows his entire life that there is this society with technology that could really fix the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that turns him into a villain that is right, that it is selfish to hold that type of he being raised where he's raised, right? He gets to see a lot of the problems in the world, and he gets to see the things that can be fixed. And he is also really prideful, but I think that that's true of Thrawn too. I think that Thrawn is like extremely prideful in the same ways, where he knows when he's right, and like I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a really hard time defending Killmonger here, because while I believe that Killmonger was right, I also know that Thrawn is coming from a place where
does Thrawn have a second story after? I mean, does Killmonger have a second story in him after settling the argument of should Wakanda be shared?
No, probably. I mean, I don't. It just. I think it kind of depends, right? Like, he obviously dies in the movie, so no.
Yeah, but like not does he have a second story in him? Is there?
I would be
one to
interested.
told,
I
but,
would be. I would be.
Are there
interested
other
in,
settings you could put him in? Where
Oh
you'd
yeah,
like to
I would
observe
be
him?
interested in like the Killmonger growing up story. Like I would actually be interested in that.
Yeah.
And like how that shaped him.
Sure.
Which is a story we are getting about Thrawn, by the way. Like I'm currently reading those books.
And you keep pushing on them, and I still have not started reading them yet. And by that I mean you need to get me a copy, Spencer, so I can start reading them. Or just tell me I need to get it on my own. But
no, I do plan on buying them. It's the pandemic makes it hard for me to walk into a bookstore.
That's so true. I think that Thrawn is, in his television appearance, because that's what I'm familiar with, he is this cool mixture of art of war style general, and ruthless bureaucrat. Because I think that he himself is so clean of what he is perpetrating, right? And he's that scary aspect of distances himself in every way from the actual war that he's a general of, right? He talks to his prisoners. That's most of what he does, right? Most of Thrawn's interaction is with his enemies as prisoners and as directing of his lieutenants. We're not good. Maybe Thrawn needs better management.
You know, it's funny. Well, I mean that's not his choice, right? He's not the guy that's promoting officers in the Imperial Army, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He makes recommendations, and they are often followed. So here's the thing.
Tarkin's that guy, right?
I mean, Tarkin is also a granddad, I actually don't know what Tarkin is.
Tarkin's special.
So here's my thoughts. Both of these characters are extremely cunning, but I think that
Killmonger's way better in a fight.
I don't know if that's
Thrawn
true.
has nothing.
If you give Thrawn a month, I think he beats Killmonger.
If you give him a plan.
If you give him time to plan, I think he beats him.
Oh, sure.
Here's the thing. Here's why I will vote for Thrawn, even though it kind of makes me sad. Thrawn is a better leader. Killmonger is a great leader, but Killmonger's plan involves people being forced to lead him through tradition, and while it's similar to Thrawn using tradition to his benefit, or using those things, it is like
Thrawn can just conquer instead.
Well, it's funny. A couple weeks on the podcast, I don't know if we said it before or after the podcast. It might not have been recorded, but I talked about how I don't exactly see Thrawn as a villain sometimes.
Yeah.
And he is a villain because, he's doing villainous deeds for the Empire, but in a lot of ways, he's just trying to progress things forward in the way that makes sense to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also similar to Killmonger. So, where do they differ? Well, Killmonger, had people leave his side because they couldn't get behind him. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really easy to get behind Thrawn. I think it's really easy to see what...
Certainly it's very hard to be in front of Thrawn.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Who are you voting for?
I'm into Thrawn. My question to you is, which do you think is a better matchup against Treya? Because I think that's the thing we should talk. Whichever one is more compelling to pair against Treya is the one we should advance, because we know ahead of time that's who they're facing.
I think they're both good matchups. I think that they're both good matchups.
All right, let's send Thrawn forward and just make it a full Star Wars, as many Star Wars characters as we can in this top. I
actually wonder if Vader's about to lose
in this top 4.
Next up, we have Thanos versus Zaheer. I don't think this one's close. I think that, regardless of the fact that Thanos would probably kick Zaheer's butt, I think that Zaheer is probably the first or second most compelling villain on this list. And also, he just... The the thing is like the second that Zaheer loses and like realizes that maybe he could have done things differently, he fixes the problem.
Yeah.
And like Thanos is like, no, I mean, no, it's cool that I achieved my goal. I'm gonna go do this again, and never even considers anything else.
Yeah, it's fascinating that they both have a scene where they offer themselves up to the good guys. They're both good scenes, but like I like that Zaheer manages to stay alive in that scene. I also think that, like, granted, probably, were some of these characters still alive to be there and experience it, I think that Thanos would haunt some of their dreams, but like Zaheer haunts Korra's dreams for a minute.
I mean, Thanos
ruins Korra.
Thanos definitely ruins Tony Stark, but
yeah,
I do think that, I don't know, like, what does Zaheer lose to in the end?
Zaheer loses to, I mean, a huge group of airbenders, right?
Yeah. Like,
to himself multiplied out and unified in a big way.
Yeah. Zaheer's loss is one of, I don't even know that he like still achieves his goal in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't even know that Zaheer ends up losing.
That's probably true in so many ways. Like, granted, the chaos Zaheer causes leaves the opening for the next villain. I like that. I like that in a series where you have a different villain every season, that the chaos of the last villain is what opens you to the next villain is pretty cool.
Yeah. What are we doing here? I'm voting Zaheer. I
like Zaheer.
I don't think it's close.
I'm done talking about Thanos.
Whew.
Who we got? We got Vader. Vader gets whom?
Magneto.
Oh!
So I'm saying I think Vader might lose.
Oh man! Oh wow! That's like the one, right?
I actually like.
If only to have like non-Star Wars characters in the finals,
this could have just been the finals, like straight up.
Yeah. I agree. Like,
so here's the thing.
I'm already for advancing Magneto because I guarantee one of our Star Wars characters ends up in the finals, right?
I mean, that's already just true, right? There's 2 Star Wars characters on the other end. But let's talk about it, though. So, I am already going to vote for Magneto.
But
I think that...
I also think Magneto's really comparable to Zaheer, so I want to see that as well.
I think that... That's actually what I was going to say, is that they're so comparable in a lot of ways. But also, like...
Man...
Vader's... The parts that you empathize with Vader are...
I actually think that the empathizing with Vader is not the reason I like Vader.
That's true, too. But, like, I was going to say that it's mostly selfishness. Like, whereas, like, the feelings that I feel for Magneto, it's like, dude, I'm sorry. And, like, I get you. And honestly, like, I don't know what I would do in your situation. That's true of Vader, too. But, like, Vader realizes he was wrong and has to redeem himself.
Yeah, Vader definitely makes his bed in a lot of ways.
He does. And I think for Magneto, whether you're watching the films or whether you're reading the comics or watching the cartoons, like, he has a lot of the same qualities as Vader, and like, he's terrifying. He's don't get me wrong, huge Star Wars nerd, like, all the way. I think that Vader is the most terrifying villain on this list. I think that like, scariest, no doubt, right? Like, the scene at the end of Rogue One, right? Like, that is like, I mean, if we're just doing
Vader, right?
If we're just doing, best scene in film, then Vader's just going to, he just wins.
He's got like 3 of them, right?
Yeah. I don't know. This is actually hard for me. You just want to vote for Magneto because you don't want 3 Star Wars characters.
Well, I mean, it's not even that I don't want 3 Star Wars characters. It's that, like, I think Magneto, like, legitimately deserves a top 4 spot, and I think Darth Vader legitimately deserves a top 4 spot. But I do know that in our tiebreaker, it's also not close.
Yeah, I think that Vader...
He's a metal man.
Yeah. He in the tiebreaker, he would win hands down. Or Magneto would win hands down.
Yeah. Like, Magneto is like the only character on this list that doesn't lose to lightsaber.
Yeah, I think I'm voting Magneto too. I'm sad to say it, but there we go.
Yeah.
All right, so Treya versus Thrawn. You know nothing about Treya. You know a little bit about Thrawn, and I have no idea who I would vote for. There's a lot less Treya to talk about.
Yeah.
A lot less story. That's not to say that there's less story that could be told, but...
Does anything Thrawn does make you feel like you did when Treya's identity is revealed?
No, not even a little.
That's it, right? That's the decider.
Here's the thing about Treya is... So for those who don't know, what happens during the old Knights of the Old Republic, there is a group of people. They're called the Mandalorians. You might have heard of them in Star Wars.
Oh!
And they are this war-hungry, war-crazed people that are attacking the Outer Rim and just conquering it and trying to defeat the Republic. And just like enslaving people and murdering them and ransacking worlds. And the Jedi don't want to get involved. And so there is a Jedi named Revan who takes a subset of Jedi and rallies them as generals for the Republic Army and beats the Mandalorians. And that's where you enter into the first game. And in the second game, you are a Jedi who was one of the Jedi who followed Revan, and Treya is who actually is the only Jedi that came back to the Jedi Council and stood trial for disobeying the Council. And then you end up losing your connection to the Force, and you regain it with the help of Treya. And it is this like wild ride. The game is not finished, which is even more upsetting. So like you end up with a lot of dialogue on the Ebon Hawk and stuff. But it's like a snake that whispers in your ear. She's so different from Thrawn. They're not even remotely similar characters.
Yeah.
Like, Thrawn is there to...
Thrawn's always there as, like, clearly a hostile. Clearly you can't negotiate with him. You can just try and learn a hint of his plan while you're talking to him.
Yeah, and the thing is like, a little spoiler for the books, like, Thrawn's ultimate goal is to save his people. And he believes that the best way to do that is for them to join forces with the Empire.
Yeah.
And he's actually been banished from his people because we don't know yet. That's probably in the third book of the series I'm reading now.
Okay.
But, like, they're just so different. I don't want to spoil the game for you for Treya. I don't want to spoil the books for you for Thrawn. But just of what I've explained of the two, I want you to vote. And we already know Treya would win in a fight.
Yeah, and that one of them is a Force-sensitive user and the other one's not, yeah.
I actually think that Thrawn could have 2 years to plan for Treya and would lose.
And couldn't handle Treya.
He just actually couldn't win.
Fair enough. I mean, that's a huge, the planner versus the snake. If the snake's winning against the planner, that's a huge point for the snake.
Yeah.
This Treya sounds very compelling, I have to say. Again and again, you've kind of convinced me over her. You've convinced me that she's, kind of got it going on.
Yeah, the next piece of art that goes on this wall behind me is actually Treya art, for what it's worth.
Sure,
So,
let's see how we feel about Treya versus...
I actually don't know who's going to win the next round either, for what it's worth.
Yeah, against guys who fly and whirl things around them.
Yeah, so we've got Zaheer Magneto. You defend Zaheer, I'll defend Magneto.
So, obviously, the clear point of these two is that they are both, of any of the characters on this list, they're the rebels with a cause. Right? They're the people who have a thing they want to do and they're getting power for it. And they're not just getting power for it. They're protecting the people they want to protect as a part of getting that power. And Zaheer's is Like, I think Zaheer actually goes to greater lengths than Magneto does most of the time. I mean, actually, that's not true. Magneto straight up turns the Senator into water. That's a crazy move. That's actually just a crazy move. That's a really good one. Holy cow, I like that move now that I think about it. Oh man, that first X-Men film is awesome.
Dude, it's so funny too. I think that one of the common threads about all of the X-Men film, Magneto's great in all of them.
Yeah, Magneto's like never a bad character.
Like, and the strength. So here's the thing. It's so funny to think about, like, what are Zaheer's goals, West?
Zaheer's goals are to break down government structures that oppress people.
Okay. What are Magneto's goals, West?
To earn independence and protection for mutants.
From oppressive governments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, they're so similar in those aspects. But, like,
they both have amazing scenes where they're in, like, hyper lockdown prisons, too.
Yeah, oh man, I forgot. Don't get me wrong. It's funny. I'm like an X3 defender. Like,
okay.
and an X2 defender. Like, I love all of the X-Men movies.
X-Men movies are great, yeah.
I would vote for Magneto here for a couple reasons. One, both these characters are right. So they both check that box.
I know why I'm voting for Magneto.
Wait, we're both voting for Magneto?
Yeah, I just put it together.
Okay, go.
Zaheer's not beating Vader.
No, he's not.
Right? Like,
yeah.
If I'm putting a guy over Vader, I'm putting him through to the finals.
Here's the thing: Zaheer is a fabulous villain. He's compelling. Yeah. He's interesting. He's like.
He's cool. He can fly.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I actually think Magneto has a beat on the charm factor, on me empathizing with him factor, on the backstory factor. Like,
we know way more, and also it's very hard for me to go against Holocaust victim. That's super hard for me to go against.
All right, the Jewish guy can't go against the guy that's a Holocaust survivor. Go figure.
Hey, well, you know.
Yeah. I think that
Zaheer feels like he is a great villain. And, like,
he also still doesn't. He doesn't have to. It's actually the reason that Vader would beat Zaheer is that Zaheer has to do one season, right? Yeah. Vader has to do, 3 films, 15 video games. Like, he has to be the guy for that much, right? And the same is true for Magneto. Magneto has to be the standard in which you're like. I know people hate the Apocalypse films, right? The Apocalypse film in X-Men, like, it's the worst X-Men film. I get it. But, like, Magneto is so interesting still in that film.
It's true that, you could give me 6-year-old Magneto, and that's an interesting film, right? Like,
I watch any part of his life. I just want to understand.
Totally. And Zaheer is...
6-year-old Zaheer probably isn't that interesting. It's probably
for what it's worth, the thing I love most about Zaheer is he can fly.
Yeah, well, it's already,
which in Avatar is cool. Yeah. In X-Men is normal.
Yeah. Okay, so we're both voting Magneto.
Yeah.
I actually already know who's going to win this.
This feels very,
It feels so sad that Magneto had to play...
underdog story to get Treya here this far.
That's fine. Magneto's still gonna win.
That's what I'm saying. Like, total underdog story, but like Magneto is the dude.
The thing is, and the reason, by the way, that I love Treya, I've been selling her this whole time. I might have just convinced you single-handedly to actually play this video game.
I might play KOTOR 2 before I play KOTOR.
I played KOTOR 2 first, for what it's worth.
It's also probably going to work way better if I try it on Steam.
Maybe. That game's probably pretty buggy still.
Well, are they both Xbox original?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're also both PC original. Anyway. So here's the thing. Treya. I think that Treya's hatred is selfish in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even know that Treya beats like Anakin as far as like their hate for the Jedi and like their reasoning for it and like all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Treya doesn't have a line as good as, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
She has way better lines than that. She's like maybe the most like. She's
Magneto's pretty quotable though. He's got good lines. He's compelling whenever he talks.
Magneto is he's a man that you. It's funny. I get why Xavier tries so hard to get him in line.
Yeah.
Like
you don't want to give up on Magneto.
No, just not at all. He is the perfect like. If
you want him on your side.
Yeah, not only that, but like if you had him on your side, you have a ton of political clout. Yeah. You have a ton like there's so much that he can do for you. It's also like why you realize how bad like the government is when they're like dealing with Magneto. You're like, just tell me why he's wrong. I understand that he's doing bad things. That's fine. Why is he wrong though?
Yeah. I mean,
I get that
Magneto
he's
has
doing
a lot
wrong.
of like he's a good protester.
Yeah.
Magneto's very cool. And I think that he deserves to win. And is anyone else on this list beating Vader? Treya's not beating Vader, right?
No, probably not. No.
Right? If Vader was what we thought was our gold standard, and now we've learned it's Magneto, right? Like,
yeah,
give it to him.
And the winner of the Need to Nerd villain bracket. In first place, we have Magneto. In second place, we have Darth Treya. In third, fourth, we have Zaheer Thrawn. And our top 8 is rounded out by Vader, Thanos, Killmonger, and Dolores Umbridge.
It's so wild that because everyone has magic in Harry Potter, I don't think of Dolores Umbridge as a person with powers.
Oh, right?
Yeah. That's so funny. Just
and you also know that
occurs to me.
It's so funny too because she can use the Cruciatus curse, so she she's powerful, but
she can make a Patronus.
Yeah.
A Patronus of spite.
Ugh.
Right.
And she won the first round just out of our pure hatred of her.
She had the shortest conversation, right?
Yeah, it didn't even matter. Like, listen, like Pride's a great villain, but like I hate Dolores Umbridge so much. Like,
yeah.
That is going to do it for this week. Please like, subscribe, review, whatever you can do to help the show. You can follow me at Spencer30H. You can follow West at East_monotone. This was a longer episode. It was a ton of fun. It was a great conversation. We don't always get to do these long episodes anymore. We're trying to kind of keep the show around, just under an hour. So doing this long episode with you was really fun. It was a great conversation, West. I really enjoyed it.
Dude, anytime. Let's get together for the, I don't know, top villains in a Mario game. Top villains in I don't know. Let's maybe what we really learned is we need to do some X-Men episodes.
It's true. We actually probably do. Maybe we find someone to bring on for some X-Men stuff because I love X-Men. I
would love to talk to a real comic book nerd.
Me too, because like I'm not that like I watched X-Men Evolution a little bit. I watched all the X-Men films. Our friend of the show, Corey, who we had on for the KOTOR episode, I'm a patron of their podcast, and they actually, one of the questions that I asked them is if you could take over any single franchise and any amount of it you wanted, what would you take over? And I said, for me, I would do Star Wars video games. I wouldn't want to like touch the films or anything, but I would love to have like 5 years to just decide the direction of Star Wars video games. And he said he would do X-Men video games. Like he didn't want to touch the comics or the movies, but like then he pitched like this GTA 5 version of X-Men where like you make your own mutant and like
soul.
Right? He like is describing this game. I was like, I want to play this game so bad.
I actually really want it to be like Lego Star Wars level of switching between characters, like just everywhere I'm going.
Here's the thing. Like the way he was describing this, of like this like Mass Effect meets GTA 5, Skyrim. I was like, I want this. I want this now, tomorrow. Take my money. Take it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we can invite him back on, something like that. But thank you, West, so much for your time. I'm going to go eat dinner. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And I'm hungry for those likes and those subs. So smash that like button, and we'll see you guys all next time for another episode of the Need to Nerd podcast.